of life Whitman gives in his poems, because he's writing this in the midst of the Civil War, and primarily the most interesting poem, finally probably, at the time of Lincoln's death, and it was the same sort of picture of grief and patriotism mixed together with almost a religious outpouring of American feeling. That's what you got after 9/11, and people regret that it's passed. Everything passes. Look what happened after Lincoln's death. The country fell to pieces for about 35 years. It was harsh. All the worst things in the country came out after that. Whoever killed Lincoln, by the way, was extremely successful in what he had intended to do, disrupt the country in a horrific, tragic way. It took us 100 more years of civil rights agitation and strife to try to sort of get back to where they would have been in 1865 if people like Lincoln had been able to direct the aftermath of the Civil War. That was probably one of the worst moments in American history. People think John F. Kennedy or 9/11 and things like that were the worst moments. I think probably the assassination of Lincoln was probably the worst one. I don't think the assassination of Kennedy, though it's a tragic event, it's very gruesome, meant a lot in the history, in the history of the country in terms of what they represented one way or the other. But the assassination of Lincoln had a tremendous deadening and debilitating effect on the whole country. I don't think the country, as I said, came out of it until people like Teddy Roosevelt 30 years later. And then they really weren't out of it until the Civil Rights Movement after World War II with Harry Truman. That's really when they started coming out of it. So that's a long time. That's almost 100 years. So it's a very tragic moment, and Whitman, I wouldn't say celebrates it, because there's nothing to celebrate. But he responds in a poetic, religious way to it as a man who loves America. Now, we have a lot of these classes that are mixed ethnically speaking, as you see, just look around you, and people from a lot of different cultural backgrounds who are coming in, if you like, to this melting pot. And many people ask, what should we do as Americans? What should we be? What should we read? I would think, that's why I read Whitman in this class, if you want to read anybody or anything to get the spirit of America, I don't think there's any better person than Whitman. I don't think there is any person even near him to read. I mean, you can read, if you want to read, Pat Robertson, okay, or some of these evangelicals or something. If that's what you think the spirit of America is, or you want to read Martin Luther King, or any of those people who represent one aspect of American culture, that may be the aspect you're interested in, okay, fine, or the beatnik poets or something, or Bruce Springsteen, the boss, or whatever. But none of these people really give you the feel of America the way Whitman does. I've never heard of this guy, you say. Or I just read one poem in high school, Captain, My Captain. And usually that's what they teach you, don't you? If you read anything by this guy, it's Captain, My Captain. And that's probably one of the worst poems he ever wrote. That was it's a nice poem, you don't forget it, but it's just trite in terms of great poetry. The best stuff he wrote, they don't touch. And that's my beef with high schools and secondary schools. And since a lot of you guys, you say, I think you got a lot of beef. Yeah, I do. But since a lot of you guys are going to be teachers, at least a third or a quarter of you may be teachers, I think that I feel good telling you this, because maybe you'll get into the schools and slowly change these things and insist that they read this kind of stuff in the high school level, maybe even the junior high school level. This is just like, to me, elementary American stuff. If you want to make a unified culture, this is where you can get someone like Whitman. Again, the problem is, I think, has been that they perceived him as being somewhat gay. That wouldn't be a problem so much today as it might have been 25 years ago. And I don't think he is gay in the sense that that's his only sexual attitude. He's just sexed up. And that, I think, would appeal to young people who probably have the same problem. So I don't think that's a drawback in today's world. Someone who is sexed up and doesn't know how to release these pressures in their being. And he does it through poetry. So he doesn't care if it's men or women. It wouldn't matter to him one jot. He's just got these tremendous urges